Good evening. In the English language, that means good evening. Today's lesson is 4.6. We're talking about slope in geometry. We learned slope last year in algebra. Let's start with the definition. It's already written down here for you on the screen. Slope is designated by the letter M. Why, do you ask? Well, nobody knows exactly why. If you actually do look up on the internet, you will find that nobody knows really why they chose M for it. So referred to as the letter M of a non-vertical line, segment, or ray contains the points x1, y1 and x2, y2 is defined by, so slope is defined by this, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You need to memorize that. Or you could flip it as y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So basically what I'm trying to tell you there, it doesn't matter what point that you start with. Either way, okay, you're going to get the same answer as long as you stick with the y subtracted on top and the x is subtracted on the bottom. Slope is written up as a fraction unless it simplifies to a whole number. Or basically what we're talking about is the change, that's what the delta symbol stands for, in y over the change in x. Okay. So knowing the formula, let's use the formula here. So we have, find the slope containing the points 2, -3, and 6, 5. So plugging into the formula, we'll do 5, so that's y2 minus 3 over 6 minus a -2. But what happens when you have two minus signs next to each other? It turns to a plus. So you do 5 minus 3, which is 2, over 6 plus 2, which is 8. Is 2 over 8 simplified? Nope. So we simplify that to 1/4, and that is the slope between those two lines. Questions? Pretty confident you already know this. It's just refreshing it. Same formula. Let's do it again. So we got 2 minus 12. 2 minus 12 over 6 minus 6. On top we get -10 over 0. Can you have anything over 0 to begin with? If you have anything over 0, what happens? Anything over 0 becomes undefined. Okay, so let me talk about that real quick. 0 over 10, this equals 0. -10 over 0, that's undefined. So our answer to our question is undefined. I do not want to see that you tell me it is 0, okay, because it is not. What does it look like if we had a drawing? Well, how do we read a book? From left to right, from left to right, right? Okay, so it's the same way. If you want a positive slope, reading it from left to right, it has an upward fashion. So that's a positive slope. Negative slope, reading from left to right, is the downward fashion. So that's a negative slope. It goes downward. If you have a zero slope is a horizontal line. How do I memorize it? Because I always like to have little tricks for you. The zero slope, 0, Z. What kind of lines do you need to draw a Z? Look at that. They're horizontal lines, is what I see. So it's like a horizontal line here and a horizontal line there. That's the zero slope that they have there for the Z. Which then no slope or undefined would be a vertical line. And how do you think I remember that one? Because an N for no slope has what kind of lines does it need to be created? Right here, which are vertical. Okay, so it's something that you have to memorize just like you have to memorize the formula. So let's go on to a couple theorems that we have involving the parallel lines and perpendicular. So here's your new information that we're going to learn from geometry. So I have them written down already. So if you need to take a pause, but I'm gonna talk through them. So there's two that go along with parallel lines. So the first one, theorem 26, says if two non-vertical lines are parallel, so you're starting with parallel lines, their slopes are equal. Beautiful, because what does that mean? Two lines are parallel. You know that parallel lines will never intersect. That means they have to slant the exact same way. So the slopes that they're going to have are going to be the same. Theorem 27 is the converse of that. So theorem 27, on the other hand, says if two slopes of non-vertical lines are equal. So the slopes are equal. What kind of lines do you have? Then you have parallel lines, right? So basically, to recap that, is if you have parallel lines, they have the same slope. Or if you're trying to figure out what kind of lines they are, if they have the same slope, you know they're parallel lines. Good stuff? Hopefully, I think it's good. Perpendicular lines. So in theorem 28 in the book, perpendicular lines now, we know perpendicular make basically the upside down T shape, right? Perpendicular. So what do we have? We said for 38 was if two lines are perpendicular. So we know these lines are perpendicular. They're not parallel, they're perpendicular and non-vertical. Each slope is the opposite reciprocal of the other. Well, what do I mean? So if one slope, let's say, was I don't know, 3/5, the opposite reciprocal would be -5/3. So the reciprocal means you flip the numerator and the denominator, and opposite meaning is if it was positive becomes negative, if it was negative becomes positive. Theorem 29 is the converse of what we just had there. So if a line slope is the opposite reciprocal of another line slope, the two lines end up being perpendicular. So recapping here, parallel lines, same slope. Got to memorize that. Please memorize that. Perpendicular lines are opposite reciprocals. Memorize that, you will be fine. All right, so here's now the type of questions that we will be seeing with it. So one example, something like this would probably be 4 points apiece. So you're looking at 16 points for this example on a test or quiz. Okay, so the first part's easy. It says find the slope of QW. So you got 3 points on there. Here's Q, here's W. So we want to find the slope. So we need to know the slope formula. So let's rewrite it over here. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. Not mattering which one matches with what. So we'll start here. We'll call this. So we got 4 minus a -3 over, back up top, -2 minus 4. Okay, well, what happens when you have two minus signs next to each other? What happens? You end up putting the 2 together and making it a plus sign. So we get 7 over -6. And it can't be simplified anymore, so you leave it as 7 over -6. So that's the answer for the slope of QW. Okay. Number 2, find the slope of a line through Q and is parallel to RW. So that means it won't intersect RW. So here's RW. We need a line through Q, but it's going to be parallel, so it's got to slant the same way. So basically, the line has to go like this. It's going through that one. Okay, so it's going through Q. Well, what did we just learn? We learned that parallel lines are what? Parallel lines, same slope. So if we find the slope of RW, right? So if we find the slope of RW, the answer is going to be the same as the line that goes through Q. So what do? We got 10 minus -3, 6 minus 4. See that 2 minus sign, so it turns to a plus. So we got 13 over 2, and it's the same slope. So the line through Q is going to be 13 over 2. Lock it in. Okay. 3, find the slope of the median to QR. Okay, let's change colors here. So we want the median to QR. So the median means that the line ends up starts with M, so I told you median was middle. So we want the middle to QR. So here's QR, so we want to find where the middle is for it. Okay, so we want to find the slope of the purple line. Well, we have this point to help us find the slope, but we need this point over here. Can we find that point? If you said yes, you are correct. Which formula do we use to find the median? or the midpoint, as what we're referring to. If you said the midpoint formula, you are correct. And what was the midpoint formula? X1 plus X2 over 2, comma, Y1 plus Y2 over 2. That is the midpoint formula. So we can find the middle between these two. So what do we have? We have negative 2 plus 6 over 2. And we have 4 plus 10 over 2. That simplifies that point to be 2 comma 7. So now we know that this point is at 2 comma 7. Now can we find the slope of that purple line? Bingo, slope formula over here. Plug it in. We got a negative 3 minus 7 over 4 minus 2, giving me negative 10 over 2. Can that be simplified? Slope is negative 5. Yes. Right now, you'd be 12 for 12. Okay. Let's finish it up with finding the slope of the altitude. Finding the slope of the altitude to QR. Okay, well, if we want the slope of the altitude, let's change it up. Slope of the altitude to QR. That means where it's perpendicular. So basically, we want to know where this line and this line make perpendicular, which is that right angle idea. Okay, so what happens is we can't find where this point is because it's not in the middle, and it's not going to be in the middle for it unless you had an isosceles triangle. But we don't know that, nor is this example being an isosceles triangle. But what we did learn, though, is that if lines are perpendicular, what do they have? They have the opposite reciprocal. So we can't directly find the slope of the orange line directly by using the formula. What we can do is we know it is perpendicular to QR, right? So can we find the slope of QR using the points? Yeah, let's do that. We have 10 minus 4 over 6 minus negative 2, giving you 6 over 8, because it turns into a plus sign. Simplifies to 3/4. So this is the slope of QR. We want the line that is perpendicular to that. Well, the line that is perpendicular, right, it has to have the slope that is the opposite reciprocal. So if this is the slope of 3/4, the slope of the altitude of QR would equal negative 4/3. Lot of stuff going on in these questions. Hopefully I broke it down for you enough by asking those questions. If you need to, try and make up your own again by making up new points here, okay, and then doing the same idea there, and you'd have another example. That's a great way of studying, especially if something like this is going to be a 16-point question. Hopefully it made sense to you, and have a good evening.